Hey there, nation. Welcome to the show where we show you how to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and we're finally back with a new edition of Battle Reports. This time is Battle Report number 8. It is a 2,500 port battle between yours truly of Stankum's Legion, which is my Ogre Khan's army, versus Brother Grimm and the Wapocalypse Now, which is a pretty much an all-goblin army. So, yep, we're finally back. I'm finally fully recovered from my back injury. It's time to start getting out these battle reports and start rolling them out. So, let's see what happens with 2,500 points of Ogre Khans and Fatty Backs go against a whole bunch of goblins.
Assemble the army!
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, let's go over my army list. This is Stankum's Legion. It is a 2,500 point Ogre Khan's army. So let's break down the different unit choices we got. For my Lords and Heroes, we have Stankum. He is a great shaman with an iron fist, and that is my general. That's all I gave him. Don't really think that wizards are really all that important at age. I mean, the magic kind of nerfed a little bit, so I just have one just because I definitely need one. Alright, after him we have Kaidu Khan. He is my Khan with the Battle Center Bear upgrade, Ogre Crossbow, Iron Fist, and the Banner of Discipline. After that we have Kogan the Tracker. He is a Mammoth Hunter with an Ogre Crossbow, Tusker, Axe of Battle, as well as a Hardened Shield. And then I have another Mammoth Hunter named the Wanderer. He is also mounted on a Tusker. He is armed with Skull Splitter as well as a Lucky Shield. For my core choices, we have the Ravagers, which is a 10-man unit of tribesmen with full command, heavy armor, and iron fists. And after that, we have the Ard Bastards, which are 6 bruisers with full command, and the Skull of Quinget. For my special choices, I have one unit of bombardiers, 4 bombardiers called the Boomers. After them, we have the Red Rovers, which are 4 Tusker Cavalry with a Standard Bearer as well as iron fists. And then we have, running at my special choices, Little Suicider, who is a saber-tooth tiger. Just one, because that's all you really need, I guess. For my rare choices, we have the Sound of the Fury, which are 2 Thunder Cannons, and rounding out my army is Fraggle Rock, who is a rock, and that is my 2,500 point army for this one. Alright, so let's go over Brother Grimm's Wapocalypse Now. It is a 2,500 point Goblins army because it's pretty much all made up of goblins. For his Lord Hero choice, he has Mad Mel, the Prophet of the Wapocalypse. He is a common Goblin King with a Green Tide special rule, shield, Goblin Wolf Tray, Axe of the Wapocalypse, as well as the Plates of Tutek. After that, we have Immortan Mo and the Hateful Eight, which is a Forest Goblin Big Shaman with level 4 upgrade, Gargantula, Spider Mother Shrine, Book of Arcane Power, and the Charm of Curse Icon. After that, we have the Shrieking Shroomhead. He is a Cave Goblin Shaman with a level 2 upgrade, 2 Power Shrooms, a Dispel Scroll, as well as a pair of Screaming Swords. After him, we have Bubba Zanetti. He is a Forest Goblin Chief with Shield, Shortbow, Poison Attacks, Skeller Spider, Axe of Battle, as well as the Potion of Strength. And then finally has character choices. He has the Toe Cutter, who is a common Goblin Chief with Shield, Heavy Armor, Shortbow, Wolf Tray, as well as a Beastbane Halberd. For his core choices, he has the Ludas, which are 40 Cave Goblins with Spears, Shields, and full command. Next comes the Backstabbers, which is a unit of 20 Cave Goblins with short bows and full command. And then finally he has those Sneaky Gits, which are 20 Cave Goblins with short bows, full command, and 1 Mad Git. He then has the Howlers, which are 12 common Goblin Raiders with full command, shields, light lances, and short bows, as well as the Death Creepers, which is 11 Forest Goblin Raiders with full command, shields, light lance, short bows, as well as the War Banner. For his special choices, he has the People Eaters, which are 24 Nasher Herd, as well as Dim Kamikaze Boys, which are 2 Git Launchers. And for his rare choice, he has Undead Fred and the Loon, which is a Great Green Idol with Innate Defense 4 up, as well as a Battle Standard Bear upgrade. So that makes up my opponent's choices for this one. Like I said, a genuinely full Goblin list. Pretty awesome. Alright, with the horns of war sounded, it's now time to talk about deployment. So here we are fighting our two 2,500 point armies on our 4x6 table. As you can see, this time in this battle report, I'm actually on the far side of the board where my army got deployed. My opponent basically won the deployment. He wanted to be on the near side this time. So this is pretty much how the entire battlefield is laid out. You have Brother Grimm's and his Wapocalypse now on the southern bar, the bottom of the board, while my Stankum's Legion and my Ogre Khan army is up to the northern part of the board. So let's go and break down the individual deployment zones one at a time. Alright, so here's my left flank. As you can see on the far left flank, he has my opponent set up his Death Creepers. Forest Goblins, Spider Riders basically get scouting rules this time in this game. So because I did not see that coming, so he set his guys right there behind my troops. As you can see on the right hand side, I got my Red Rovers. Those are my 4 Tusker Cavalry. Right next to them is that massively huge white model. That is my Rock, that is Fraggle Rock. And I'm excited to see what that guy can do. I've always wanted to try one of these big monsters from my Ogre Khan's army, so let's see who he can do on this battle. All right, so here's my center portion. You can see there's my boomers, which are my 4 bombardiers, followed by my huge brick right there of Ogre tribesmen. That is the rovers. In the middle there, you can see my great shaman. He's on the left-hand side. That's Stankum, and right next to him is my Kaiju Khan. He's my Battle Slider Bear as well next to him. And then right there on the right, and the kind of like in the center, you have my hard bastards. Those are my 6 Ogre Bruisers with the Skull Quinget. Then right next to them, leading the front, you have my Saber-Tooth Tiger Little Suicider. Right behind him, you have my 2 Thunder Cannons, the Sound of the Fury. And to the right, you got the Wanderer as well. He's on the very far right. He's the guy who has the Skull Splitter shooting ability. And then to the left of him is my Hunter. The Hunter who's equipped with his sort of battle as well as the hardened shield. So those guys are going to sit there to make my flanking. Basically, the entire battle is just to charge forward with my infantry, flank with my cavalry units, and envelop my enemy, defeat them. So yeah, let's go and talk about my opponent's deployment zone now. All right, so this is the left-hand deployment for my buddy Brother Grimm. As you can see there, he has his big Morton Moe, as well as his Hateful Eight. That's that huge gargantuous spider with his level 4 shaman up there. He's taking the path of shadows in this one. Right next to him, you have the backstabbers, which are those red-capped goblins. Right in front of next and to the right, you got that huge Nasher herd, which is the people eaters. Right behind them, you have the the looters, which are the 40 huge unit of 40 night goblins with spears, as well as their level 2 cave goblin shaman is located there. And then right behind the backstabbers, you have the 2 doom dive. Oh, sorry, the 2 get launching catapults for his army. So yeah, that makes up my opponent's left flank. All right, here's a close-up of my opponent's center line. As you can see there, he has his huge gray green idol. That's Undead Fred. He's right there in the back, right next to that unit of Cave Goblin Spearmen. Right in front of him, he has his yellow-capped Night Goblins. Those guys, I believe, are called not the looters, them Sneaky Gits. That's what they're called. Those are those Night Goblin archers. Right next to them, you have to the right, you have his general, which is Mad Mel, the Prophet of the Apocalypse. He's that huge chariot. Next to that big, massive block of Goblin Wolf Riders, which is called the Howlers. And the very far right of his army, he has his Goblin Chief, the toe cutter, I believe is what he's called, and he's making up the right flank on that part. So that makes him my army enemy's deployment zone on this one. All right, and that takes us to turn number 1 for the Ogre Cons. As you can see here, this is the picture for turn number 1 right after movement. As you can see there, I just basically sent everything forward as quickly as I possibly could. Well, probably not as quickly as possibly could. I was afraid that my opponent had Mad Gits throughout his armies. I mean, we know now that he didn't really have all that many Mad Gits. He only had the one in one of his units, but I didn't know at the time, so I was kind of cautious for the center lines to move my guys up there because those Mad Gits are pretty dangerous. So as you can see there, I kind of cautiously move my cavalry up, my Tusker cavalry. I also move up my Fraggle Rock as well, moving here just as normal movement allowance. Same thing with my boomers, so that way they can open fire as well. Same thing with my regular tribesmen. But on my left-hand flank, I basically moved up everything as quickly as I could. As you can see there, I moved up my bruisers to kind of take up the center there next to that hill, so that way I can bog up his central lines. I got little Suicider. He's right next to them, getting ready to charge into his general, trying to keep him pinned down on that side. Behind them, you can see my Sound of the Fury, my 2 Thunder Cannons, kind of skirting along as quickly as possible, getting around that hill so that they can open fire on some ranks. And the very far right, you can see my 2 Hunters kind of like stalking forward to intercept the flankers, what I see on his right-hand side. So that pretty much makes a move for this one. Magic phase kind of ends up being unspectacular for me for the most part. As you can see there, all I really did was my Shaman's managed to get off the spell that gave +1 toughness to my my 6-man unit of bruisers. And the reason why is because I was trying to basically pull out dispel dice from my opponent's magic pool, but he didn't fall for it. So he let that spell go off, and everything else I tried to cast off, he basically just shut down as well. So because of that, all I have is just a +1 toughness for my bruisers, which is kind of nice because they could definitely use it for the close combat phase coming up here pretty soon. So that makes it magic for this one. With magic phase pretty much done, as you can see, we go right into the shooting phase, and shooting phase is actually pretty successful for me. I opened up with the skull splitter that my Hunter the Wanderer is carrying, and he opens up on that unit of Wolf Riders, managed to pick off 2 of those guys, so that part was kind of cool. But the main kind of action star of the shooting would take place on the left-hand flank of this battle. In the center lines, I cut loose with my boomers onto that unit of people eaters, that huge unit of Nasher Gashers. Managed to plink off 6 of those guys with my opening volley, so that was pretty nice to see that part. I mean, I'm just surprised like how many shots these guys, the bombardiers, can actually get off, especially when they become within range of something. So that part was kind of nice. The thing that really hurt me, however, was the fact that my troops moved, as well as we had firing at long range. So basically, I was suffering at -2 to hit. So I basically had to roll 6s in order to hit my targets. So my guys actually rolled a pretty sizable number of shots. I think we ran up like 18 shots, but only 6 of them managed to hit as well as wound as well. So that was a main problem there. So that is shooting here on the center lines. And as I said before, the real star of the show is actually my two thunder cannons. As you can see, that there's a perfect line of sight between my thunder cannons behind the hill, right straight towards the gargantula. So I have both of my cannons open up on that bad boy. We both managed to hit, managed to get our target into range, and I managed to put on 7 wounds onto that bad boy. So that part was actually kind of cool, which is pretty awesome. So I know that cannons got kind of nerfed a little bit within the Ninth Age compared to their Warhammer rules, but you know what? I'm okay with it actually. It's not that big a deal. Most of the time, I never played armies with cannons anyways when I played Warhammer 8th Edition, so it's not really a big deal for me to have that loss. So, that part's kind of cool, but I thought it was just kind of neat that my cannons managed to put down a lot of wounds onto that Gargantula spider. And since none of my units are engaged in close combat, that basically ends the turn 1 for my Ogre Cons, rather. So with my turnover, we go with Brother Grimm's turn number 1 for the Goblins. As you can see here, this is the picture of the table after movement phase. As you can see there, he already starts charging in some of his troops. You can basically see him moving his entire main line for his cinder portions, moving up as quickly as possible. He keeps his Gargantula back. I think the reason why I did that is because he didn't want to get sniped at anymore by my Thunder Cannons. In the far left corner, you can see that his Spider Riders, his Spider Raiders are starting to move in towards the rear flank of my Tuskers. So that part was kind of rough. And if you look at the action on the right-hand side, basically his entire right-hand flank charges forward with both his Great Green Idol, his General, as well as his Wolf Riders, as well as his Goblin Chief on a chariot. So yeah, that pretty much makes up the movement on this one. Here's a close-up of Brother Grimm's Spider Riders, basically trying to get to the rear flank of my Tuskers, which is kind of rough, but you know what? I'm not really too hesitant about those guys because my next turn I was able to move out. I'm able to move out anyways. What he tried to do is try to charge into the rear of my guys, but he was unable to do so because of just poor dice rolling on his part. So luckily I caught a break on that part. So that's moving on the left-hand flank. And here's a close-up of his center line. You can see his Nasher Dashers moving up forward, trying to hit straight towards my Bombardiers. You also can see his Backstabbers moving up as well to kind of protect the right flank of his Gargantula. He also sends up his main looters up to the center line as well, so in order to gauge whatever comes up that way. So that's moved for his center line. Here's a close-up of his charges that he did basically in the center line. As you can see, he sent his Great Green Idol, Undead Fred, and the Loon, as well as his General, Mad Mill, straight towards my Bruisers, as well as my little Suicider, my Saber-Tooth Tiger, so that poor guy's going to get minced up by the General, and his Great Green Idol basically is there to pin up my Bruisers as well. And as you can see behind them, he has his Sneaky Gits kind of like bring up support as well to kind of help out and watch the give support to those two main fighting units. And here's a close-up of my opponent's Wolf Riders, as well as his Goblin Chief on a Wolf Chariot charging into my 2 Hunters. And this one, I'm kind of excited to see what's going to happen in this fight, because this is the first time I've ever used Hunters on Tuskers, and I just want to see what they'll be able to do. So, yeah, looking forward to this combat immensely. We then get into the magic phase for this turn, and Brother Grimm just totally slams with the magic. It is insane the amount of power this guy basically has with his 2 wizards, mounted on a Gargantula, and he got that Spider Mother's Blessing as well, giving him extra channels as well. I was unable to stop any of his spells. He basically got off 2 big ones. The first one was the -3 toughness spell that the Lord of Shadows gives you. So his guy cast that upon my Fraggle Rock, so that part was kind of sad. So I was unable to stop that. I just rolled like buttons, so now he has -3 toughness. And then my opponent used Irresistible Power and managed to get off his other spell, which is the big spell that lowers your strength, and he got that on my Tuskers and gave me -3 strength with that part as well, and I was just unable to stop it, just watching the danger that just occurred from that part. So yeah, that's what happened in this round.
Klaatu, Veranda,
And to add insult to injury, the fact that my magic phase was unable to stop my opponent's spells at all, when he rolled on the Irresistible Force, he basically only lost 1 wound and the rest of his power dice, and that was pretty much about it. I basically got that detonation spell is what it was, and it basically just put only one more wound on his guy, and it was absolutely ridiculous, and I was like, oh man, magic is just with my enemy on this part. So yeah, that concludes the magic phase for my opponent's turn on this one. Alright, and so with that we go directly into the shooting phase in this one, and as you can see here, we basically had the loss of a good friend, the loss of a titan, and that was my poor Fraggle Rock. Oh, my poor Rock just got destroyed. With -3 toughness, it basically makes him a toughness 3 monster, so my opponent just opened up with everything he had. He fired with his, with his backstabbers, those red-capped cave goblins, those archers. They just opened up a volley fired on him, basically brought him down to half wounds, and then my opponent fired both of his git launchers at him. They both managed to smash right into him and managed to put out the last 3 wounds on him and basically put him down. So yeah, I'm really sad about that. Poor Fraggle Rock, man. He didn't even get a chance to crush any gobos by the time they got done shooting at him, man. Curse that spell. But that's okay, Fraggle Rock. We will avenge you. We will avenge you. And with my heart broken and the shooting phase now completed, we go directly into the combat phase. As you can see in this picture, Mad Mel, the general of the Goblin army, just ran over a little suicider like a speed bump. It was not even a waste of time for him. He basically killed that poor saber-tooth tiger with impact hits. Because he did that, he was able to overrun directly into my unit of bruisers as well. So that part was kind of rough. That part was really rough as well, which is kind of sad. So that's combat so far here in the center portion. And combat between Undead Fred, the Great Green Idol, and my bruisers actually surprisingly went actually kind of well. My opponent charged me, and the only wounds he was able to cause to me was his impact hits. I managed to put 2 wounds onto one of my bruisers as well. On the flip side, I was only managed to put 1 wound on him, and that's because the Great Green Idol has a toughness of 8, and my bruisers have a toughness of 6 with their great weapons, so not much going there at all. But I was actually surprised by how low of weapon skill that the Great Green Idol has, so yeah, I was actually really surprised about that. That part was kind of nice as well, which kind of gives my bruisers some time to hold out and get my tribesmen to get stuck in the mix, which would be kind of cool as well. So yeah, that makes up combat for this center portion of the board. And combat here on the right-hand flank was also surprising well, not so much in a good way for me, but more in a bad way. As you can see, first of all, let's talk about what happened on the far right. That Chariot managed to put on 2 impact hits onto my Hunter the Tusker, which is my Wanderer. He's the one with the Skull Splitter as well. They basically fight out in combat. He put 4 wounds in me at the end. I managed to put 4 wounds back on him. He technically won since he charged me, so because of that, I was forced to take a break test, but I managed to stick it out, so that part was actually kind of nice as well. So that was combat on the right-hand side there. On the left-hand side, it just ended up being a one-sided victory for me on that part. My tracker just basically just unloaded on that unit of Wolf Riders and managed to kill 6 of those guys, leaving only 4 of their friends alive to tell the story. And those Wolf Riders auto broke. Luckily for me, my opponent didn't roll very well for his to flee roll, which is actually kind of nice. He only managed, I think, get away about 8 inches, and I gave a pursuit about 6 inches. One thing I am kind of sad about when it comes to Tusker Cavalry, they don't really have Swift Stride. Really, I thought they originally did have Swift Stride, but then I read no, that's just on for hunters on foot. So I was not able to roll my 3d6 to go after him. I was only able to roll my 2d6s to take whatever roll came up. So I didn't manage to get to close in with them. But because I didn't get very far on the next move phase, I'm just gonna charge into him and just be done with it. And so that'll be the end of the combat for this round. So with combat finally over, we go on directly to Ogre Khan's turn number 2. So this is the top of turn number 2 after movement phase. As you can see that, basically I just threw caution to the wind and just unleashed the Hounds of War. As you can see on the left-hand flank there, I sent my Tuskers charging into the Gargantula. I also sent my Tribesmen, the center charger, directly into the Great Green Idol Undead Fred to help kind of deal with that issue as well. And basically I moved everything else forward as well. I moved up my Bombardiers just a little bit in order to engage those that Nasher herd, as well as scoot up my cannons a little bit so that way they can start putting on some shots directly onto that huge mobs of goblins behind that Nasher herd. So yeah, that pretty much makes up the movement phase for this one. Here's a close-up of my Red Rovers, my Tusker Cavalry charging right directly into my opponent's Rock, his Gargantula, so I'm really excited to see what exactly is going to happen on that part. The only thing I got to worry about is I got that -3 strength for them, so during my next magic phase, I just got to have to try to dispel that. So, and as you can see in the very back, I left those Spider Riders eating my dust, which is also kind of satisfactory, so that happened there. And here's a picture, this close-up of the center portion where basically I just sent a huge steaming mass of ogre flesh just start charging directly at that Grand Green Idol. So I'm looking back, it's pretty excited to see how the combat here in the center part goes. It's going to work out pretty well. My tribes will just break right through and finish off Undead Fred and the Loon, and then from there they can overrun directly into the goblins that are right behind him. Same thing with my bruisers. We have an advantage to finish off his general as well. Mad Mel will be dead, and we'll be able to break through this and just kind of move on forward. So that is the plan. That is the hope on this part. So yeah, looking forward to see how combat goes here in the center lines. And here's a close-up on the movement phase on the right-hand side. As you can see in this picture, basically all I did was I just charged my hunter forward. He ran down those fleeing wolf riders, managed to slice him down in the process, and just kind of reformed himself in order to charge into the flank of Mad Mel, the general of my army, my enemy's general, Mad Mel. So yeah, looking forward to that one as well. So with movement phase done, we go directly on to the magic phase. Alright, so here's a picture of the magic phase. It was a complete wash for me. I only managed to generate 4 power dice. My opponent basically had 3, so that's all we had. So all I did is I just used my 4 dice and just used it to dispel the weakness spell that my opponent had put on my Tusker Cavalry. I managed to break the initial casting roll of 15 in order to make that happen. So because of that, that -3 strength is now lifted off of my Tusker Cavalry. They could definitely deal with that Gargantuan now. Other than that, the rest of my spells are kind of useless because I use all my power dice to do that. So yeah, with magic phase over, we go directly into the shooting phase. Alright, with that we go directly into the shooting phase. As you can see in this picture, I opened up with my boomers, my 4 bombardiers. They managed to plink off half that unit of Nasher Dashers, so that part was kind of cool. The unit now is approximately half strength. Unfortunately for me, however, because the Great Green Idol counts as being a battle center bearer, and since they're within 12 inches of their general, they use their general's unmodified rerollable leadership, and because of that, the Nasher Dashers basically just stay exactly where they're at. So I'm kind of worried about those guys. I don't know how well they're going to perform here in 9th Age, but back in Warhammer 8th Edition, they were a pretty brutal group, so I'm not looking forward to that one as well. With my 2 cannons, the only viable targets they can basically shoot at is that unit of Night Goblins are located here in the center of the board. However, unfortunately for me, I overshot my shots, so because of that, shooting phase is kind of a wash for me. So with shooting out of the way, we go directly into the combat phase. Close combat was kind of a bad situation for me. As you can see in this center photo, I managed to only put an additional wound on top of Undead Fred, even with all my ogres. Even when we calculate my ogre charge, didn't do much damage to him whatsoever. My great shaman, as well as my Khan, were unable to inflict any major wounds on my either. Basically, it was a miracle that one of my tribes managed to slip a wound through onto Undead Fred. So Undead Fred is now carrying 2 different wounds. That Great Green Idol is a beast. That thing is super, super deadly. In exchange, however, he is a beast in terms of toughness. In terms of fighting, however, the Undead Fred is pretty lackluster when it comes to actual combat. Managed to kill one of my ogres in the process. He managed to put 3 wounds on one of my guys, kill one of my tribesmen in the trade-off. So that part was kind of sad. And as for the combat between my hard bastards as well as Mad Mel, the general of the Goblin army, that battle was pretty brutal. In the end, I only managed to inflict 2 wounds onto Mad Mel, while Mad Mel was able to put on 5 wounds onto my bruisers. It was absolutely brutal. That battle axe, the axe of the Apocalypse, that thing is deadly, man. He gets D3 strength, D3 additional attacks every turn, and he just unleashed it. He was hitting me with strength 7 attacks. He was hitting me with 7 attacks apiece. So he just rolled out of the box for that roll. So it was pretty brutal. So he managed to kill off 5 wounds, one of my bruisers, as well as put 2 more on one of my floating on one of my other guys. I magically put down 2 on him, and I lose combat for this part, and I have to take a break test. And I failed my break test, not just once, but twice, on my general's leadership as well, with the advantage of leadership giving leadership 9, and a rerollable as well. My first roll was an 11, my second roll was a 12, so my boys had to run away. And to make matters worse, my opponent has switched around on his chariot, so my boys just get ran the F down by the chariot, and Mad Mel just basically chops down my bruisers like it's nobody's business. And then he combat reforms to face my hunters, which is even worse, so now I gotta look forward to that craziness taking place here. So man, Goblins are the illest in this one. I think it's kind of funny people talk about like how 9th Age they kind of balanced everything out. They most certainly did, because Goblins are a lot deadlier now than they used to be, which is pretty awesome in my opinion. I mean, it sucks for me, but it's kind of cool for my opponent, which I think is kind of funny. So, oh well. Them is the breaks. So with combat pretty much over on this side, we move on to turn 2, number 2 for Goblins. Alright, here's the bottom turn 2 number 2 for the Goblins, and I forgot to take a picture of this. On the left-hand corner, as you see there, you'll notice my opponent's Gargantua is no longer there. I forgot to mention, in the previous combat phase, the impact hits from my Tusker Cavalry alone was pretty much able to push over the edge and managed to destroy that. I forgot to mention that, by the way, that my Tusker Cav basically did that. So my apologies. My refund is coming to you guys in the mail as we speak. So as you can see here in turn number 2 for the Goblins, a lot of charges, lots of moves just basically broke down. As you can see in the left-hand flank, my opponent marches up his Spider Riders to get into a good kind of position to put my Tuskers into a kind of like a weird kind of pincer attack. As you can see there in the bottom, his Goblin archers, his backstabbers, basically reform to the left to face me that way. Because they put me within 8 inches, he unleashes the one mad git he has his army. His mad git charges right through my tuskers, managed to inflict 2 wounds on those guys, so that part was kind of rough. If you look towards the center of the portion there, you can see basically all the mad charges are taking place. My opponent sends in his looters as well as his sneaky gits. They come charging to the front as well as the flank of my Ogre tribesmen to kind of give support to Undead Fred. Also, the Nasher Dashers charge directly into my Bombardiers as well, so they'll be engaged in close combat this next turn. And on the far right, Mad Mel charges into my Hunter and starts bringing pressure on the right-hand flank. So that makes up movement for turn number 2 for the Goblins. Here's a close-up of my enemy's left flank. As you can see there, his Mad Git charged right through my Tusker Cow, causing 2 wounds, and now setting himself for a perfect pincer attack between his backstabbers as well as his Spider Riders to get me into a pincer attack there, so not looking forward to that part. Here's a close-up image of my Ogre tribesmen being just overwhelmed by both just goblins as well as Undead Fred and the Loon, getting ready to swarm my guys in the center, and there's also a close-up of the Nasher Dashers charging into my Bombardiers. And here's a close-up of Mad Mill charging into my Hunter. And with movement done, we go directly on to the shooting phase, because the magic phase my opponent wasn't very good this turn. He rolled 2 1s, so we go directly to the shooting phase on that part. I was pretty lucky this turn. For the most part, my opponent's missile troops were pretty much engaged in close combat, so I was lucky in that sense. But those 2 Git launchers targeted my 2 Thunder Cannons, and that part I was kind of sad about. Managed to inflict 2 wounds on the Sound, and he managed to inflict 1 wound on the Fury, which is kind of sad for me at the same time. People like to complain that the Git launchers have been kind of nerfed in the sense that they don't have as much power as they used to in the previous edition of Warhammer. Yeah, well, that might be kind of true. At the same time, they are still kind of deadly as well, so, you know, that's just the breaks, you're gonna take losses, you're gonna take wounds. That's just the way it is. So yeah, that's pretty much shooting phase for my opponent on this one. With the shooting phase over, we go directly into the close combat phase, and as you can see there, it ends up being a pretty maddening world taking place. During the combat phase, we looked at the Nasher Dashers. The Nasher Dashers actually have an initiative of 4, which is 1 step higher than my Bombardiers. So because of that, they were able to go first, and they just chewed right through 3 of my Bombardiers like they weren't even there. Oh my god, they ate those poor guys alive. I managed to have one guy escape, and you can see there, basically he broke, and he's fleeing towards the fence, and he's running for his life. My enemy then does a quick combat reform and centers his Nasher Dasher to charge directly into my Bombardiers, which I'm really sad about. So yeah, that just happened. And to make things worse, as you can see in the close combat phase, my entire unit of tribesmen with my general and my con just get destroyed. Basically, my opponent called forth the Green Tide, which which allows his units to fight into an additional rank as well. And combine that, whenever a unit that charges is within 8 inches of the Great Green Idol, they get either pick of 1 of 2 rules. They can either get Devastating Charge, which gives them an additional attack, or they can get the +1 to wound. So my opponent decided to go straight up with the additional attack with the Devastating Charge rule. So I'm fighting a full huge frontage of 20 goblins. Basically, they're fighting up to 15 guys, times 2 attacks, that's 30 attacks. Then I have a huge massive horde of 40 cave goblins armed with spears and no less. And so they also get armor piercing as well, because the new mundane weapons rules are just banned when it comes to spears now. And they also get attack at the additional rank as well as additional attacks as well. I managed to plink off about 6 of the cave goblins on the spear-equipped cave goblins, and managed to kill about 6 of the goblins with short bows. But in the end, with all the attacks that happened, combined with the crush attack that my opponent's Great Green Idol did to my unit, it was too much to bear. Being charged by 2 units with standards, being hit in the flank with the damage and the combat res, just proved too much for my guys. I had to roll twice at a past leadership score of 7 when it was all said and done. I managed to fail the first roll. I managed like a 9, so I got to roll again, but instead of getting a 9, I got an 8. For want of an 8, I basically had to flee. So I rolled my 2d6, I rolled 3, and then my opponent charged forth all of his units, and he easily beat that score, and he ran my tribesmen down and killed my general as well as my battle standard bearer. And at this point, I'm realizing now, between you and me and the screen that you're watching, that I might be losing this one. So yeah, that just happened. From that devastating loss in the center, we do go down to the flank. We have Madmel, my enemy's general, going against Kogan, the tracker, and the combat actually ended up being pretty good on this one. We managed to inflict one wound on each other. He managed to put one wound on me. I managed to put a wound on him. He beat me by one because of the charge, but luckily for me, Hunters have leadership at 9, so I just roll under an 8, and I scored that 8, which is really, really helpful for that part. So that part was pretty nice. Up at the top there, combat between the Wanderer as well as my opponent's chief. Goblin Chief, the Toe Cutter, ended up being resolution by me. I managed to finally finish him off and destroy that chariot, which is also kind of nice as well. But that chariot managed to put 4 wounds in the end onto that hunter, so the Wanderer is now carrying 4 different wounds, which is kind of rough as well. So, yeah, combat phase, not so great for me. So with combat being done, we go directly now to turn number 3 for the Ogre Cons. Alright, so here's the top of turn 3 after movement phase. As you can see, basically I just charged everything in I possibly could. All that I really had left because I got to make some big gains here, otherwise I'm going to lose this battle. So you can see in the left-hand corner there, I basically charge in my Tusker Cavalry, my Red Rovers, having charged directly into that unit of Backstabbers, which is that unit of 20 Night Goblins on the bottom. I also took the Sound of the Fury, I charged right directly into the Nasher Dashers, hopefully some impact hits, as well as attacks from my Woolly Mammoths, my Woolly Marinos, as well as my Bombardiers on those Thunder Cannons could basically do some damage there. On the far right hand side there, as you can see there, I also charged in the Wanderer, and he's now fixed in with Mad Mel. So that is movement for this one. Here's a close of my Red Rovers about to be in the pain on some Night Cave Goblins. Hopefully destroy those guys with some impact hits, and then from there I could probably charge and overrun into the back of that big unit of Cave Goblins, which is the, I believe they're called the, what are they called? The Looters. So that's my plan there. So that's charging on this one. Here's a close-up of my Sound and Fury charging to the Nasher Dashers, and my plan here is hopefully just to overrun those guys, be able to destroy them, and then have them impact directly into the front of, excuse me, of the Ludas, and actually get them in a pincer attack there. So that's charging on that part. And here's a close-up of the Wanderer charging into front of Mad Mel as well, so hopefully both these hunters can take out their general. So with movement out of the way, we go directly on to the combat phase. Alright, since everything is pretty much engaged in combat, and since my only wizard, my unit basically died as well, so because of that, we go directly to the combat phase. You can see in this picture, my Red Rovers just steamrolled right over those K Goblins. Those guys did not stand a chance whatsoever. Impact hits killed off half the units. My Riders finished off the rest of them, so I utterly destroyed that unit. It was pretty awesome to see that to happen. So you can see here, I basically do a combat reform, have my guys shift over to the left real fast, so that way they can charge indirectly into the front of the Looters there. At the same time that happened, up at the top in the center there, my Sound of the Fury also just steamrolled right over those Nasher Dashers. My impact hits were pretty critical on that part. I killed about half the unit using the impact hits. The attacks between the Woolly Rhino as well as the Bombardiers finished off the rest of them, and basically I took some minimal losses on that part. I think they managed to get like a wound or two off of my 2 Thunder Cannons, but in the end, it was just too late for them. We just destroyed them, so that part's pretty nice. So, plan achieved. So my next idea is to charge those units in, get them fixed in directly into those units of goblins, get those guys taken care of, and then move on to the rest of it. Alright, on this one, as you can see here, combat's still sticking out between the Hunters as well as Mad Mel. Both of them are kind of sticking it out, and I'm just absolutely surprised like how resilient this Goblin King is actually being. And in the 9th edition just kind of shows you like how the balance mechanic is really helping out in this portion here. I managed to inflict, I think, 2 more wounds on top of Mad Mel. He managed to put on another wound on top of my Wanderer, as well as into my Kogan the Tracker as well. So end up being kind of like, I believe I won the combat, but he managed to stick it out because he's next to the Great Green Idol, is able to give him his rerolls for that part, so he's doing pretty good over there. So yeah, that pretty much runs out combat. So with combat being over, it's now moving on to the Orcs and Goblins, or rather, just the Goblins. Alright, so here's a picture at the bottom of turn 3 after movement. As you can see here, the Goblins also decided to charge instead of just taking things standing. So as you can see here on the left-hand side, the Spider Riders charge into the flank of my Red Rovers, which will be kind of interesting to see exactly what happens, because those guys have a hero inside there, as well as poison attacks. So I'm kind of seeing how that combat kind of goes. Up at the top, as you can see there, both units of Goblins charge directly into my Thunder Cannons, so there goes my edge. You're trying to take them away with my impact hits, so that's kind of rough. And on the right-hand side, as you can see there, Undead Fred, the Great Green Idol, decides he's not going to stand around anymore, and he charged directly into the Wanderer, so that was pretty rough as well. So yeah, lots of charging going on in this combat, so that makes it the movement for turn number 3 for the Goblins. Here's a close-up of the Death Creepers charging the flank of my unit of Red Rovers. We're going to see exactly how that combat goes. I'm kind of confident that my Tusker can survive this, hopefully beat these guys and then be able to charge into the rear of those Goblin units, but I mean, who knows at this point, because these Goblins are just deadly in this game. So that's charging on this side. Here's a charging here taking place in the center portions of the battlefield. As you can see there, that unit of looters as well as the sneaky gits are charging directly into my Sound of Fury. And I'm kind of nervous about this one because spears are exceptionally deadly, especially against mounted characters in this game. So I'm not looking forward to see exactly what's going to happen when the damage starts raining down on my poor boys. So yeah, that's charge here in the center portion. And here's a close-up of Undead Fred charging into my hunters, and I have no idea how I'm going to take on that guy. With toughness 8, it's going to be a miracle for me to manage to kill that Great Green Idol. So that's pretty much moving for this one. My opponent's magic phase is kind of a wash. He couldn't get any of his spells off. I dispelled him, so with that we go directly into the shooting phase. And in the shooting phase, I am playing Mad World because my opponent was being an absolute punk. He targeted the one thing that he could shoot at with his Git launchers, and that was that one flame bombardier. If that guy could have just, fled off the table, it would have been fine. My opponent would have gotten the points. It wouldn't really matter if that happened. But he decided to do things in a truly goblin fashion and just basically shoot him when he's down. So he launched both his Git launchers and managed to kill off my last bombardier. And they did it out of spite. Out of spite, Brother Grimm. Shame on you. Shame on you. Alright, so here's the photo of the combat phase falling after that horrible lowdown shooting of my Bombardier. And that guy must have been the popular guy because my Tuskers just unloaded on that unit of goblins. Both my Rider as well as the Tuskers for 2 ranks in basically just managed to destroy that unit and basically killed about 10 of those guys. It was absolutely fantastic. Oh, sorry, not 10 of them, 9 of them, sorry. The Goblins managed to inflict 2 wounds onto my Tusker, which is kind of sad as well. So one of those guys is now carrying 2 floating wounds. But in the end, I clearly won the combat. He had a face of break test. He took off, and he's running for the hills. So yeah, vengeance achieved for my Bombardier. But combat didn't go so well here in the center portion. The Sound, which is one of my first Thunder Cannons, just got obliterated by that unit of looters. There's just too many of them, too many lethal strikes, too many armor-piercing attacks. It was just bad. So because of that, my Tusker basically just, my Thunder Cannon just basically blew up and was destroyed. My opponent then does a quick combat reform and kind of sets up such a way so that we can charge the flank of the Sound. Oh, sorry, of the Fury, which is my other Thunder Cannon, which is kind of sad. However, the Fury on the other hand, he did a pretty good job. He managed to chop down those sneaky gits, which is the unit of yellow-capped cave goblins. Managed to chop them down to a pretty considerable size. I think he managed to kill about 5 or 6 guys. Unfortunately for me, they managed to stick it out and was unable to flee, so I wasn't able to break them. But yeah, I'll take what I get. So that's combat here in the center. And combat over here was absolutely brutal. In the end, I managed to inflict 1 more wound. The Wanderer managed to pull off another wound on top of Undead Fred and the Loons. He managed to inflict 1 wound there, but Undead Fred just basically unleashed with his crushing attack that he had with strength 10, d6 wounds, absolutely destroyed and killed the Wanderers. That poor guy was dead when that happened. However, combat between Kogon the Tracker as well as Mad Mel actually went in my favor. Mad Mel was unable to inflict any wounds whatsoever, and Kogon the Tracker managed to take off the remainder of the wounds they left on top of their general. So their general is now dead. So Mad Mel is no more thanks to the combined efforts of my 2 hunters, which was pretty awesome at that part. So that part was kind of cool. I was sad to lose the Wanderer, but at that point, though, the Wanderer was carrying so many wounds, he wasn't going to be much of a use to me anyway. So with combat out of the way, we go directly to the Ogre Khan's turn. So this is the top of turn 4 after movement for the Ogre Cons. You can see here I basically just charged in all my stuff that I could. I charged in my Red Rovers into the back of the Ludas and hopefully get to run those guys down with some impact hits and then crush the rest of my Riders. My Fury, the Thunder Cannon, is still kind of tied up there with the Cave Goblins there, so they'll still be doing combat there. And the far right hand side, Kogon the Tracker charges into Undead Fred and the Loons. So they try to do my best to finish that guy off. So that's movement on this side. Here's a close-up of the Red Rovers charging the back of the Looters. So the plan here is to run through that unit and then have those guys do a quick combat reform after destroying that unit and have them give support to Kogon the Tracker and dealing with Undead Freds. So yeah, that's charging on this side. And here's the epic showdown between Undead Fred as well as Kogon the Tracker. I'm looking forward to see what kind of damage I can do, especially with impact hits from the Tusker, which will kind of give me some kind of hope of standing against this Great Green Idol. Since I have no magic phase, since my caster is dead and everything that I can shoot is engaged in close combat, we go directly into the combat phase. Alright, so as you can see here, this is the beginning of the combat phase. We just steamrolled through those goblins, which is pretty epic in my opinion. I managed to plink off almost the entire unit of those goblins that I charged in from the back with the Ludas. I was able to basically break those guys, and because of that, they had to flee. I charged them down, I ran them down, and killed those units. Unfortunately for me, however, I did lose one of my riders. That little 3 die there was supposed to show the fact that I lost one of my riders, so I did lose one of them, so that part was kind of sad, but you know, them's their breaks, basically. Same thing happened with the Fury when he took on the rest of those Night Goblins. He killed about 5 Night Goblins left in that unit of those sneaky gits. They had a break as well with an auto break. They ran, I pursued, I have a chariot, so I have Stritch Stride, ran those guys down, so Goblins are now DRT, so that part was pretty freaking epic as well. So that's combat here in the center portion of the board. And combat here on the right hand side was pretty lackluster. I managed to inflict a wound onto Undead Fred in the Loon because of my impact hits from my Tusker, but my opponent would try to strike back with his crushing attack, was unable to hit my opponent, so unable to hit me, so because of that, didn't cause any wounds, so now we're just basically stuck in a stalemate. I technically won combat because I charged as well as inflicted a wound, but he stuck out his break test and he managed to stick it there, so that is end of combat for this round. So with that over, we go directly into the Goblins next turn. So we get to the top of the Goblins' turn. My brother Grim takes a look. Go see what he has left. All he has is Undead Fred, as well as a couple of Spider Riders and his 2 Git launchers. He realized that he doesn't really have anything much left to win the game at, so basically he calls the game, and that's it. This is where the game basically ends. As you can see in this battlefield, we knocked the living hell out of each other. This battle was much more aggressive and much more deadly than I anticipated because I was taking on an army of goblins for the most part, and this battle was intense. So yeah, that pretty much rounds it up. So with that being over, we go directly into the after action report.
Sure, I could have stayed in the past. Could have even been king. But in my own way, I am king. Hail to the king, baby.
Alright, now it's time for the after action report. This is the part of the battle report where we talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we can learn for the next time that we battle it out. This was a 2,500 pound battle between myself, Commander CheapSkate of my Stank Gums Legion of my Ogre Khans army versus Brother Grim of the Apocalypse Now, his all goblin army. So let's go ahead and talk about exactly what happened. It ended up being a victory for yours truly, which was kind of nice, but it became a very, very slim victory. Those goblins ate up much more of my army than it should have, in my opinion, because in 9th Age, goblins are definitely got a deadlier turn. They got things like mad gits, mundane weapons like spears are super deadly, especially when I have a lot of cavalry choices in my army, like I do for my army list. It was absolutely brutal. I was not prepared for the level of intensity that these goblins were going to bring in. And Mad Mel, his general on his chariot, wolf chariot, with the plates of 2 tech and that axe of the Apocalypse that gives him D3. Additional impact hits and D3 additional strength and D3 additional attacks. That was an amazing kit. It was super, super deadly. Did not see that coming, and it just tore me up. It was just pretty bad on that part. And Nasher Dashers. Who would have thought that Nasher Dashers, which were the equivalent of the Cave Squigs from previous edition, who would have thought those guys were deadly? Those guys are just absolutely like a wrecking ball. He just sent those guys charging right directly into my center lines, and they just ate through everything they charged into. So Nasher Dashers are also really deadly in this game as well. And the Great Green Idol. Oh my god, that thing is intense. The Great Green Idol, why in itself, the model itself isn't very good in terms, in my opinion, is not very good in terms of dishing out attacks and damage and things like that. What it makes up for is support and giving buffs to an all-goblin army. Giving units within 8 inches that charge, devastating charge, or +1 to wound is huge for those guys. Especially when we talk about goblins who are not very strong to begin with, and they just creamed through most of my army with that. It was just crazy. I mean, who would have thought like goblins would be cheating up Ogre Khans, for God's sake? So yeah, it was pretty brutal. Did not see that coming. One of the main weaknesses in the army list I'm noticing is that I don't have a lot of high strength attacks. Now, granted, every ogre is packing at least a base of strength 4, which is nice, but in terms of additional strength bonuses, like things like additional strength bonuses from great weapons, magic items that give out great weapons as well, I really don't have a lot of that, so I didn't really have anything to answer to the Great Green Idol question that popped up, because that guy had a toughness of 8, so I might have to rethink my list and think about changing some things around if I decide to play with Ogre Khans again. That's right, we're entering 2,500 points, and now I'm starting to think that maybe I might go with a different army instead of Ogre Khans. Ogre Khans is fun to play, to learn the game, 9th Age at first. Playing at 2,000 points is a lot of fun. But now that I'm at 2,500 points, I'm thinking about maybe trying a different army out and seeing what it's like because we got a bunch of different armies in my gaming group. We trade armies all the time to play against each other and to play test what it's like to play different armies. So I figure, why not at this point? I'm thinking maybe I might try elves. I don't know. It'd be kind of neat. Not sure if I'm going to try out Sylvan Elves, Highborn Elves, or Dread Elves yet, but I think it's kind of on the horizon. I'm looking forward to trying out one of those armies and seeing what it's like cutting my teeth in with elves for once. I know there's a lot of hatred for elves out there, but you know what? I'm going to use one. I think I'm going to use one of those armies. An elf army I think would be kind of cool. So yeah, that's going to do it for this one, for this battle report number 8 for the Ninth Age. Once again, feel free to add any comments, like, subscribe, putting any comments you like, things about what I did well, what I did poorly, with the rules, anything like that. I love the back and forth. I love interacting with you guys, and so it keeps me going in these battle reports. And so yeah, just put your input in. And yeah, we'll see you guys on the next one. For now, see you later.